Hey, Nick Shaw here, co-founder of RP Strength. You are watching Influencing Entrepreneurs.
After years of teaching entrepreneurship and consulting business owners, I realized that true knowledge comes from the wins and losses of those entrepreneurs. These are the stories of those business leaders. I'm Casimir Ward, and this is Influencing Entrepreneurs. Today, I'm here with Nick Shaw of RP Strength, who is a University of Michigan alumni and lifelong fan. And you started your journey after graduating with weightlifting and physical training and turned it into an app that I almost want to say is somewhat of a phenomenon on the internet. But where do you go from your graduation at University of Michigan to fitness?
I was always really big into fitness growing up, playing sports, sort of was called a gym rat, like early on by my whatever high school coaches and everything, because I just kind of loved it. I knew that I wanted to do something sports or fitness related. And so I actually went in, sport management was what I ended up graduating with. But about halfway through is when I met this gentleman at the gym, the student weight room. And, most of the time you don't see people doing serious lifting in a college gym like that. But it was this guy, and he was squatting, really heavy weight all the way down. And I'm chatting with him, lo and behold, long story short, it was, Dr. Mike, who I co-founded RP with, and he convinced me to get into powerlifting. And I had this sort of gap where I loved competing in sports in high school, but then I didn't compete for anything for a couple years in college.
And all these sports, they were not weightlifting related.
No, it was running, actually, funny enough, yeah. But I just knew that I loved fitness, and then he convinced me to do that, and I sort of, kind of like day one, once I started lifting with him, knew that I wanted to, rather than just sports, I wanted to do something fitness related. I didn't quite know what, but that was kind of the beginning of my career and path shifting from just sports into more fitness.
Was a lot of it driven by the competition of lifting, like internally, or like I would like bodybuilding more for the vanity part? Like I want to look like a Marvel superhero. Was that just the byproduct of it?
A little bit, yeah. But also, again, it's just that drive of you can always get better. There's always something you can do. And what's really cool is I think that sort of helps set the foundation for me is like when you get into business, you can kind of apply that same mindset. There's sort of always something you can do to get better. But I also loved, for lack of better terms, just doing hard stuff. Being a runner growing up, like runners are kind of crazy, endurance athletes. And so I knew that I had that aspect in me. And then bodybuilding is also pretty crazy because you push yourself to such extremes that there's a little bit of, I kind of like doing this just because most people can't. Like there's a little bit of that in there. And you sort of combine all those together and you just get kind of a meathead, I guess. Eventually, after a couple of years of doing that, I started to realize that I don't want to do this the rest of my life because it's really hard. And I was traveling all over New York City. Get on the subway, go all the way downtown, walk 5 or 6 blocks to get to where I was training this person, to come all the way back, get on the subway to come back uptown. It's just like, man, I can't keep doing this forever because it's just really, really hard.
So when do you kind of tap out?
Yeah, this would have been probably around 2010, 2011. So I graduated from Michigan in 2009, did the personal trainer thing for a couple of years. And then Mike actually left after 1 year to go back to East Tennessee State to get his PhD. And he started coaching people online. And I was training people in person. We kept sort of referring people back and forth. And then just one day we're like, why don't we just start a little business together? So then it's not as weird as like, hey, why don't you go work with my friend? It's like, hey, now why don't you go work with my colleague? And so that was kind of the beginning of the shift where like a light bulb started to go off as, I wonder if I can do more online stuff and not have to do as much in person because that seems a little bit more scalable. And then kind of slowly started doing a little bit of that. It's one of those things where it's 100% in person, 0% online. Maybe the first year it's like 95-5. But then over the years, it started to shift where it was like, well, 80-20, 70-30, 50-50. And then got to the point where, this online thing can actually be more lucrative. And for me, I was like, I can sit at home in my apartment and work with 5 or 10 people, let's say, online. Man, that's a lot better than
not running across the cities.
Exactly. And so that's when it got to 50-50. And I said, well, I wonder if I lean more into this online thing. And then it sort of became the inverse where it was like, well, then it's 60-40 online to in person. My wife and I left New York in 2015. The last year or two, it was one of those things where I was doing mostly online, but I could sort of hand select a few people in person that I enjoyed working with. And that was really cool because I still like doing it in person, but it's nice when you can be selective about who you want to work with.
Get together, you decide to start this company with Dr. Mike, you start building this out. What did online train, was it just webcam back and forth?
How we sent programs to people real early on was all through Excel files and email and sometimes social media. And this was super early on. So there weren't a lot of online coaches. So we were definitely early-ish. We weren't the first people to do it, but there weren't a whole lot. This was at the time where Facebook was something, this was before it was called Meta. And Facebook was a really powerful tool back then because you could post stuff and sort of all your friends saw it versus now like 1 out of 10 maybe see it, something like that. We just worked with a lot of close friends and family first, a lot of times for free or charging next to nothing, did a good job, and then just used social media to get some referrals. People would see that, they would reach out. Like that's how we grew the business for the first year or two, just through basically Facebook.
But that's just based on your Excel sheets. What about your time? Not performing, but
I mean, not a whole lot of time. So usually what would work is you'd get in contact with somebody, they would fill out a questionnaire, you get a bunch of information, you'd kind of build out the program for them, email it to them, they'd take a look at it, review. Most of the time, like we weren't even doing phone calls. This was like before Zoom as well, but it was just laying all that out and then going over with them via email, sometimes social media, DMs, whatever, to the point where they kind of knew what they were doing and then they would just go about executing it. So maybe that's an important thing too, is like most of the time we were going after people that were a little bit more serious about training, because when you're working with someone online, the motivation kind of comes from within. Right. And if you're looking for an online coach to motivate you, that's
not what you're selling.
Exactly. We're selling the plan to get people there. Coming in with motivation is sort of already assumed. You just execute the plan. That's what we provide. We provide the very detailed plan that's going to get someone from, point A to what they want to get, their end goal, point B.
Is it at that point that you start shifting towards YouTube, or do you?
YouTube came quite a bit later, but what we did try, some of the dates are a little fuzzy, is we tried like a paid website where he did a lot of videos, but you had to pay a small monthly fee to get access to it. And it wasn't until COVID hit in 2020, and we said, wow, this is not going anywhere for a while. The paid membership site wasn't doing as well as we kind of thought. So we said, you know what, why don't we just take all of this content and let's just start putting it out on YouTube. Let's just make it free. Because generally speaking, we had never had an issue with giving people information and it being a negative for us. It was almost always a net positive. And so that was really the beginning. And we had synced up with our video guy, who is now, Scott, the video guy, if everyone watches the YouTube. And Mike and him sat down and created a strategy. They said, all right, well, if we're going to do this, we have to have a ton of content ahead of time because we have to be really, really consistent with it. And I don't remember what the posting schedule was back then, but we had like maybe 30, 40K subscribers, something like that, because we just didn't put a lot of time into it.
But even that, like getting from 0 to 30K is a whole lot.
Yeah, so I say relatively speaking because on Instagram we probably had like 500,000.
So you're able to convert some of those or direct them, yeah.
With the kind of little effort we had put into YouTube, yeah, just as kind of a byproduct of having other big social media platforms, we had some presence there.
What were you doing on Instagram that made it grow an audience?
Yeah, well, so I was actually the one running our Instagram from day one up until probably 2022. I took personal pride in it because for me, it was like this giant experiment of you think something's going to work, you think something's really, really good. Sometimes it does really well, sometimes it tanks. And you're like, okay, well, that's really interesting. And then sometimes you're like, I have no idea if this is going to be good. I think it's kind of crap. And then it does really well. So it's like this permanent experiment. I'm not a super creative, artistic person, but what was beautiful was the way Instagram worked is with fitness. You're sort of showcasing pictures of before and afters, things like that. It really resonated. And the beautiful thing about it was people were providing the content for us. I wasn't having to make it. If I was having to make it, we never would have, done that well. And holy crap, that was 90% of our content. Maybe 10% was stuff we would actually create, but all we were doing was just searching for what other people were posting and then repurposing it on our own page. And, that took us from 0 up to, I don't know, over 500K. That was really what we did for something like 7 years.
So we're talking about you building your audience. TikTok, Instagram, everyone's like, oh, build an audience, and that's how you get famous. Famous doesn't mean dollars. So how do you start capitalizing on this so you can generate revenue?
Yeah. So this goes back to, we started coaching people online. It kind of quickly outgrew just Mike and I, but Mike was in a PhD program at ETSU. And so what's in a sport physiology PhD program? Well, other people that are very serious about fitness and sports and take it seriously and kind of want to use evidence-based to get people better results. So we started recruiting some of these folks to become other coaches because we knew it couldn't just be him and I. So we all of a sudden got in a couple other people, and before we knew it, we had 5 or 10 other coaches. But again, it's still hard to scale coaching. This is in October of 2014. We came out with the Renaissance Diet 1.0. This is just an ebook. We didn't even sell it on our own website. We sold it through a friend's website. I just remember in the first few days, it sold like 1,000 copies. I go, oh, light bulb goes off.
And it's just all leveraged through your social media?
Yep. And through Juggernaut Training Systems, which was run by a friend, Chad Wesley Smith. He had a much bigger audience than we did because we were still kind of fairly new. And he gave us kind of a lot of credibility because his platform, his Juggernaut Training Systems, was very popular at the time. So being on there was able to get us kind of the foot in the door. I just remember we sold like 1,000 copies in a few days, and I go, digital products. This is how we scale things. And then it led to a conversation between Mike and myself. How do you take one-on-one coaching and how do you scale it to a lot more people? And he's like, oh, I think I got some ideas. And he created this Excel template that had pre-built faces in it. And we launched those in February of 2015. People that first bought them started using them and then posting their results online. And then people are like, how did you get that? Like, there's your before and after. You went from fairly lean to like jacked. Yeah. They're like, what happened? Oh, well, I use these RP Strength diet templates. And so it was all organic. And then that led to like the first kind of hockey stick growth, whereas people were then buying them because if you were going to go pay for a one-on-one coach back then, this is 2014, you're still paying a couple $100 a month.
Yeah.
But why not pay $100 to get this one-time purchase digital file that's going to lay out everything for, 3 to 6 months? A lot of people started buying that. And that really kind of was that first cool moment where I was like, oh, okay, this is pretty interesting. A good sign for us that the digital products and doing this through social media is kind of the way to go.
So as we kind of come to the end, what would you say is the biggest business skill set that you developed over the course of your tenure with RP Strength?
I think that one of the biggest things that's helped us is the idea of just giving away a ton of content, giving away a ton of information. So we have a lot of people that will say, hey, I've watched the YouTube videos, and they've never even bought anything from us. But like, hey, I took all that information that I've learned and I've lost 50 pounds. I've lost 100 pounds. That doesn't bother us. Like, we see that as a win because, well, one, they're watching the YouTube channel, they're supporting it. They're probably going to tell their friends about it. People start asking, hey, Jimmy, how'd you lose 100 pounds? Hey, you got to go check out this YouTube channel. And that's just how it works. Let's just give out our best stuff. It's probably going to attract a lot of people. It's just going to bring in more eyeballs. It's going to be really helpful. That and just being super consistent with it over years has really never steered us wrong. That's a huge one. Just that abundance, giving out some of your best stuff. We just expect that people will appreciate that and probably want to support us. And it has not worked against us in any way.
So closing out, people's health, people's fitness, lots of stories of the befores and after. Do you have one that just is the one that you carry around with you that like, this is why we do this?
Yeah. Trevor Fulbright, he works for our company now. Through Juggernaut Training Systems, probably about a decade ago, came to find RP and Dr. Mike, and it really kind of clicked with him. And at one point, I think he was like 350 pounds. He's gotten down to like under 200. I think he weighs probably about 220 right now. He's bigger than I am now, but he's just completely changed his entire life. And he's someone that we brought on to help just kind of part-time. Now he works full-time for us. He actually writes most of our emails, because what we learned was being a copywriter for you, it's really hard if you don't understand a lot of what we're doing. Well, you take someone that's been digesting all of our information for a decade, and he knows the content literally better than I do. He's now sort of taking what Dr. Mike says and
Saying it better.
Yeah, saying it better, like saying it in a way that like, he knows it, but he lives, eats, breathes, sleeps, all this stuff. How cool is that you took someone that was probably not very healthy a decade ago, completely changed his life, and now he works for our company and is now taking that same information that transformed his life and is providing it to all of these customers or potential customers. Who could say it better than him? No one.
Excellent. I can't think of a better message to end on. Nick, I really appreciate you stopping by and appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for watching. To watch more episodes of Influencing Entrepreneurs, be sure to subscribe on YouTube at Nexagy Education.